audience.
Okay. Martial law is defined as the substitution of civilian rule for military rule during times of war or disaster, and can last for any given amount of time. Earlier this week, martial law was declared in South Korea by President Yoon for seemingly no reason. This event has been frequently discussed in the news over the past week, and I've spent some time compiling information from multiple sources. In a world where U.S. politics is becoming increasingly unstable, it's important to understand how extreme measures like martial law are, and what average people have the power to do against it. So today we'll first discuss why martial law was enacted, secondly, how the public responded, and thirdly, the calls for President Yoon's impeachment. On December 3rd at 11 p.m. local time, President Yoon declared martial law to protect the country from what he described as anti-state sympathizers of North Korea. According to the CNN's December 4th article on the event, South Korea has been in political unrest for months, with President Yoon, a conservative with the People's Party, clashing with the more liberal Democratic Party, which has the majority in parliament. This has prevented him from enacting legislation that he promised in his campaign. President Yoon's enactment of martial law was an attempt to gain more political power without the heavy opposition from parliament. These are very extreme methods, and by all means, the martial law had no reason to be declared, making this a terrifying situation for South Korean citizens and the rest of the Korean government, as most of the power was immediately given to the president without any real cause. This is why Korean citizens almost immediately began to protest the situation. Shortly after the announcement was made, the leader of the Korean Democratic Party called for people to protest at the National Assembly. Citizens of Korea immediately began to start, and even after receiving threats of arrest from the police, massive crowds in Seoul did their best to protest and block any further activity from the military and the police. According to the BBC's December 3rd article on the topic, lawmakers almost immediately began to scramble to the National Assembly, which was being blocked by police and military, where they were able to gather and vote unanimously to block the martial law decision. Shortly after, Yoon lifted the martial law. Even after things have calmed down, the aftershocks of this event still continue to affect the Korean government days later. According to the New York Times December 3rd article on the topic, many lawmakers have called for Yoon's resignation and have threatened to begin impeachment proceedings if he refuses, stating that calling for martial law was a grave act of insurrection against the country. Members of the military are also being asked to be held responsible for upholding the law, and members of Yoon's cabinet have already begun to resign. As of right now, however, Yoon still has not stepped down, despite apologizing. In conclusion, this week has been stressful for the citizens and parliament of South Korea, but this situation seems to have mostly resolved, despite the implications it might have for their future. The power that Korean citizens had in this situation should not be understated, and the choice to fight against your government is not always easy. This event showed the strong dedication that South Korean citizens had for their democracy, and it's certainly something U.S. citizens should keep in mind for the coming years. All right.
Show us.
Yay!
Show us.